What is personalisation? It's the big marketing term on everybody's lips. But what does it actually mean to real-life companies, creatives, and consumers? Welcome to episode 2 of Distillery Sessions. Here at Content Studio Distillery, we gathered an expert panel at Samsung King's Cross to have an open discussion about what's creepy, what's useful, and what audiences like. So tune in to find out more. Over to Samsung King's Cross.
Personalisation offers the opportunity to build deeper connections with audiences, to make better use of their time, better products and experiences, and to add value to consumers. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Samsung KX. My name is Steve Ween. A few years back, I founded Distillery, a content studio. We work with brands across a whole bunch of different sectors, from Google to charities such as the WWF, Oxfam, and the DEC. We help those brands and organisations to think, make, and blow up content to help them win fans. I'm so excited to be here tonight with you all. A big thank you to Samsung KX for having us. We have an amazing panel lined up, and I can't wait to get stuck into the discussion. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion tonight, then jump online and use the hashtag Distillery Sessions. Before we get going, I want to briefly reflect on why we've put this event together tonight. At Distillery, we help brands win new fans. It's not about shouting the loudest in the crowd. We're all drowning in content, so much bloody content. 300 hours of video uploaded to YouTube every minute. We're all bombarded with WhatsApps, texts, DMs, Facebook, TikTok, notification snaps. Videos are fed to us on every platform, and occasionally we get a phone call. Influencers are showing us what to buy, where to go, what to do on holidays, what to cook. How do brands actually get their voices heard, their content seen when there's so much competition, there's just so much noise? It's so easy to start shouting, to stop listening, and to keep just blasting out more content. As a content studio, one of the ways we successfully help brands build a deeper connection with their audience is through personalized content. We've learnt so much on our journey, and I thought that this evening I could kick off by sharing some of the things that we've learnt with our experience creating personalized content. The first thing is that, yes, personalization is exciting. It's cool, it's a little bit shiny, it's quite new. There's so many opportunities, but personalization 101 is don't personalize everything. Don't go too far, don't be like a kid in a candy shop. Identify key moments, stages in the funnel, and comms to personalize. The second thing is, once you've identified those key moments, don't be creepy. Don't be a data show-off. Make sure you're making the moments count and you're always adding value with personalization. I find this example quite creepy. I don't like LinkedIn using my face to advertise to me. I didn't realize that I'd given permission to use my face. And sorry if there's anyone here from LinkedIn and I've called you out. The third thing is the creative. Don't just slap a name on it, right? To truly add value, you need to personalized content that has interesting, not creepy data, that actually marries together the creative and the data in a really meaningful way. Adding personalization to content that wasn't created for personalization is just a recipe for success. And right up front, you need to decide on the personalized elements in the briefing process. The fourth thing, and final thing, I know this sounds 101, but be a human. Think like a human. Use data in a way that your mum would appreciate. While personalized content gives you the opportunity to build deeper relationship with customers, it also has the unique ability to really piss off your customers. Getting someone's name or gender incorrect in what feels like, for the user, a one-to-one conversation can be exceptionally insulting, and it's a surefire way to lose some fans. While creating 30,000 videos for the London Marathon runners, raising money on Just Giving, we were using bed content and were overlaying a number of layers of data. The data was also exceptionally time sensitive. And I know this sounds basic, but just test, and it will give you the best chance of avoiding and insulting the user. So at Distillery, as a content studio, we wanted a personalization engine that could render video and GIFs in near real time. at scale for the organizations that we work with. We wanted an engine that could create thousands of pieces of content with almost unlimited data points to create content at scale that delivered value to the end user, that really cut through the noise. We couldn't find one, so we built one. And tonight we're launching our product Foundry, capable of near real-time content rendering all in the cloud. It can deliver tens of thousands of pieces of content in seconds, and combined with our knowledge as a content studio, we're excited to collaborate with brands and agencies to use the technology in really new and interesting ways. From programmatic ads to customer service, the use cases are really endless. Collaboration is core to our values at Distillery. We're running a series of workshops with brands and agencies and our friends. If you're interested in attending one of these workshops to really help us create and shape our technology so we can better collaborate with you, then please do grab a distiller tonight and let us know. But enough from me and my gifts. I'm going to hand over to Distillery Senior Strategist Peter Hoffer, who is going to lead tonight's discussion. Thank you.
There might be areas of their health, that we can recommend improvements in. So yeah, I suppose personalization for me is really personal. Sorry, I had to say that. But I suppose, being from a background in nutrition and health, I think it's like incredibly important nowadays in this kind of, as Steve was saying, this kind of information overload, that we really are tailoring the information, the health information and nutrition information that we're giving people and making sure that it's specific and unique to them. Because ultimately, we want to be able to help the individual and to help them, help them create some change within their life that's impactful for them. And so really, I feel passionate about personalization in that regard to really benefit individuals' health.
Yeah. Okay, so my name's Tim Hughes. I run a company called The Brief Doctor. And so I'm exactly the opposite of what Georgie does. So I work with clients who have no idea about personalization. So my background is I've done television marketing for about 20 years. So I used to work at the BBC, Paramount Comedy. I was one of the people that took a very small channel called G2 and made it Dave, which you now all love. And now I work with different brands around the world. So I do a lot of work with people like Sony and Univision, and I work with all their marketing teams. So they come to me and they say, we don't know a thing about personalization. And I think, neither do I. But what I can do is I can put you in touch with the right sort of people that do. So what I do is I take all their strategy, all the information about their users, who their potential users could be, and then I filter it through the right sort of ideas, the right sort of strategy, and then work with the right sort of agencies who will make that into something that, as Steve said in his introduction, that won't piss their users off. And I think the big thing that I do is I work with a lot of very ambitious people who have products that people want, but products that don't necessarily resonate with every moment of their lives. So I have to filter out a lot of the emperor's new clothes and find out what actually personalization would really work for their audience and what is not relevant for them. That's in a nutshell.
Hi, I'm Iona. So my background is in design, sort of product design primarily, but I always really loved science and data growing up and really wanted to merge these two things in my career, but couldn't really find the right job, I guess, when I left uni. And I kind of fell into genetics in kind of like a quite layman's kind of way, and thought about how we could kind of inject personalization into products, but using genetic data as the ultimate tool of personalization. And it was about 5 or 6 years ago before consumer genetics was really flooding the market as much as it is now. So I set up a company called .1 because that was the sort of 0.1% was kind of your unique genetic part of your sort of code. And it creates personalized textiles and posters and fashion garments made out of the unique part of your DNA to code the design. So it's taking like Nike ID, but kind of on genetic steroids, basically. And yeah, just I have no scientific background, but I just completely fell in love with it. And I think it's just such an amazing tool to apply to different fields.
Hello, my name's Mark Runacus. My day job now is I'm a planner in a creative agency. But in terms of personalization, I think it's always been part of what I do, because I was the guy who 35 years ago slapped your dad's name on a letter because I kind of grew up in what we used to call direct marketing in the early days of using data for personalization. But even before that, do you know what? I realized that I've been so lucky that I've had a couple of formative experiences that, as a planner, now mean that I'm always focused on the one person that, in my day job is to inspire my creative colleagues to produce great work. And I do that by thinking of a real person. So I try and make everything very personalized. And I think the things that helped me do that were my first career ambition was to be a radio DJ, okay? And I'm very lucky. I actually managed to do it. One day I sat in for Dale Winton. Is that showing my age? I mean, God bless him, he's no longer with us. But and you're taught in the media to just imagine that you're talking to one person. And that was my big training in terms of radio, to manage the listener, singular, and to make your communications incredibly personal. We started using the language incredibly human and stuff like that. And then I became a journalist after that. And again, my training was when I was writing as a journalist to imagine that there was one reader who was reading what I was writing. And I hope I carry that forward with me today in my day job as a planner in advertising. Maybe I have a different understanding of the word personalization as a result. It's less about data and more about a real person at the end of the kind of communication process that we're going through.
Thanks, Mark. Oh, thanks, Mark. So even in the introductions, it's really interesting that each of you addressed different parts of personalization, which I hope we could explore a bit further in our discussion today. So Georgie, you mentioned that as part of Vitl, customers provide their health information to you. So how do you go about earning and keeping the trust with the customers when they're giving you such personal information?
Yeah, I think that's like a really important question for us at Vitl. And we really recognize that trust is kind of the core of our business, and it's really what our business is built on. And we really can't cut corners, when it comes to that trust. So there's certain, things that we have done. So all of our software is custom made in-house, and we don't use any third-party software. We use the latest encryption, and where we do work with lab partners, for example, in our DNA and blood testing, we make sure that they are registered and certified with the appropriate bodies. So yeah, we really take that trust very seriously in terms of how we're interacting with the data.
And is that something that you've the rest of the panelists have found as concerns, especially when people who are curious of starting personalization projects?
Yeah, I think it's the fundamental thing that anyone goes to is anything to do with your data. God, my mom won't even put a photograph on Facebook because she thinks someone's going to steal her identity. It's really interesting because you've got younger people who are quite happy to have a transactional relationship with their data and say, I will allow you to use this level of data for this level of service or opportunity back. You've got an older level of audience who are very petrified of it. They don't really understand what's going on. And they think whatever data they're going to share with you, even, quite simple data, they think it's going to be used to defraud them. And it does create a two-level society because it makes one very tech-savvy and one very fearful of very good intentions. There are some people with very bad intentions, but I would say most brands are wanting to have a deeper engagement with you, because a deeper engagement, what we're looking for is sales. That's what we're talking about. We're not using this data for the good of our health. We're using it to generate something for the user that brings them back as a customer and keeps that relationship.
Mark, is that something your members of the Data and Marketing Association have come to you as well, of that concern of how to safely use the data, but also communicate with the customers of how that data is being used?
Okay, we have probably the best double-edged sword regulatory framework in the world, in this country. I'm no longer the chair of the DMA. That's a voluntary role, which is elected. So I did it for 3 years. And during those 3 years, we did actually kind of navigate our ways through the GDPR. And do you know what? It's a bit of data legislation that 4 years ago, I never thought I'd be able to speak about amongst a group of 20 or 30 somethings, which I'm guessing you all are, because legislation isn't something that kind of your generation gets excited about. But you did get excited about the GDPR because, testimony to the fact we're all here tonight, it allows us to do or to not do what we want to talk about, which is personalisation. But to your point, I think there's a broader issue, which as an ad man, my discipline is suffering from a dreadful malaise at the moment, which is trust. It's that word, trust in advertising is right now at an all-time low. I mean, they chart trust in advertising every year, and it is so low that people like me, in my profession, we are thought of less than politicians, than the energy companies, estate agents, literally. Advertising, and those of us who work in advertising, are the lowest of the low. And one of the contributory factors for that is the dreadful way in which we, if you are marketers in the room, those of you, in which ways we have used data. And the GDPR, I think, came along at the right time. It gave us a significant wake-up call, and I saw a significant change in the boardrooms of the major companies around the UK that are members of the DMA. I saw data protection, whatever you want to call it, go from being a geeky obsession to being something that everybody in the organization, not literally, but certainly in a marketing organization, cared about, knew about, and the conversations we were having were people were always ensuring that the customer was in the room when they were making decisions. They weren't doing stuff simply because the tech allowed them to do it. They were only doing stuff if they thought that would help the customer. They would advance the brand values and all that kind of stuff as a result. So I'm pleased to say I have seen a shift in the way that our industry has thought about data. There are still some notable cowboys, but that's a whole different conversation.
Can I just pick up on one point that you said there about politics? Which is very interesting. So we're talking a bit more about data than customization at the moment. But in the last general election, if you were a Tory voter, so going through your Facebook, your Twitter feed, wherever you were accessing your media, you would be accessing quite divisive creative. If you were a left-leaning voter, you are not seeing any of this very forthright marketing activity that's going on. This is the first election we've had when we weren't seeing the other side of the argument, and it was very specific, particularly from the right, keeping the narrative they were selling to their voters out of the left's media stream. It was very dangerous, and it came up trumps for them. It was wrong, but it came up trumps for them. And is that the world we're going to live in? It's certainly, we're going into another election in November with in America. That's certainly the way. Democrats are not going to see what the vitriol Trump's sending out them, and that's through choices, through media choices, more a media plan than a data. But it is all part of the customization argument. That's probably taking us too dark at this level, isn't it?
Yes.
We want to talk about nice Coke bottles, things like that.
So I guess to take the sunnier side, are there sort of companies or organizations that you think are doing an excellent or innovative job of using innovation? So Iona, maybe have you seen things that really impressed you?
Yeah, I guess my field is more like genetic personalization, so that's kind of what I always refer to. I think it's still kind of used in a slightly tokenistic way because people can't, it's used in a very serious way in sort of medicine and that healthcare and things, but I think from a brand point of view, it's still quite tokenistic, but it's been used in quite fun campaigns. And I just quite like to see how brands use a new tool that they have, which is like genetic personalization, and apply it to their product. So there's been from like Marmite did a big campaign where you could do a DNA test to literally find out if you loved or hated Marmite. which is so stupid.
Was that a real thing?
That was a
It
real,
actually happened?
it was a literal
I
thing.
thought it was just my advertising world making it up, but it actually
could
did
pay,
that.
You could pay £60 for the privilege, when you
I
could
will do
actually
that.
just buy a jar of Marmite and be like,
Science was invented.
yeah. So it's like, so that was like a Unilever project, and then like Spare Room did another campaign where they could find you like perfect flatmate. Based on your behavior traits and that kind of thing. So obviously it's all kind of really stupid, but it's just quite interesting how it can be applied to so many different areas, and brands are really jumping on the next wave of personalization.
And it's wonderful creative stuff.
Yeah, it's great. Like, it's kind of magical, and even if it is a bit silly, it is still, there's a magic to it, which I think is what brings things to life. So I think, yeah, a lot of brands are doing fun things.
Are there other brands or campaigns that really surprised you or impressed you that you've seen in sort of the personalization field? Anyone?
So there's a brand I'm using a lot at the moment, Duolingo. Does anyone learn a language with Duolingo? Do you know the owl of shame? So they have the little Duolingo owl, and if you don't study Duolingo for a couple of days, you get an email and the owl starts crying. So it's heart-wrenching. So it's using your emotions. It's, think, look, feel. It's a slightly negative emotion, but the owl's so cute. You go, oh God, I've got to go and type my Danish today. Or I do anyway. It's the way I react. But that again, it's where people are using playful customization within responses that you've made within an app to generate an affinity with the brand. So I now, rather than them sending me a shitty email saying, do your blinking homework, I now feel good about the experience. And that for me is what brands are asking me to do. How can I use the skills and technology that is now available to have a deeper conversation with that audience? So that audience becomes fans, those fans become advocates, those advocates go and tell all their friends, and we all share in the glory.
If I may, I'm going to say something which I hope it's not controversial to you very clever people, but as a consumer, I think I'm more excited about personalized experiences than personalized products. Because it may be that I'm overthinking it, but I kind of think personalized products are relatively easy to make. I don't know, you probably have a whole world of pain that you guys have to go through. But a personalized experience, on the other hand, I mean, wow. And my first ever personalized experience, and I hate name dropping, but I was quite young. I was 19. I told you I was a journalist. And I went to one of the very early openings of a body shop, right? Does anybody remember? They're still there, aren't they? Anita Roddick, she was the founder, and she was actually at the shop, and I was interviewing her as a journalist, and after about 10 minutes, she said, just hang on a minute, I've learned a lot about you, I've got to know you, I'm going to go and make you your own cologne. And she went in the back of the shop, and she came out with my own cologne, and, okay, that's a product, but it was an experience that I'd been through.
Was it Jubilee?
It was an experience that I'd been through. But I think the second one was when I got tickets for the 2012 Olympics. Did anybody else go through that? Do you remember the experience? If you got the tickets, the experience was absolutely amazing. On the morning, well, first of all, I got an email telling me that your tickets will arrive on this certain day. And on the morning, I got a text saying your tickets will be there in an hour. And literally within an hour, the doorbell rang. There was a postman at my door, and he had the branded thing. And the first thing he said to me was, what have you got? He knew he was delivering Olympics tickets. And I spoke to a human being about the whole thing. You know, it was an amazing experience. So that's when I think personalization kind of really comes to life for me, because it's much, much more emotional when it's the experience than a product.
Products are experiences.
Yeah, I think I was going to touch on that. I think you make a really good point, Mark, and I think that's something that, we really try to do at Vitl. So we reach out to our customers a lot. I think what kind of the point that you're touching on is the human touch, right? It's like, how can we, we're obviously working with huge amounts of data. We're working with huge amounts of variables, particularly when it comes to health. So we're talking about, as I said, consultation, DNA data, and blood biomarkers, etc. And we're trying to give a recommendation for a supplement or a product or diet advice, lifestyle advice, etc. But there is still an element of speaking to the customer and really still understanding what they're saying and what they want. And that's really, really, I think, important for us. So we hold focus groups to really engage with our customers face to face and to kind of know them, I suppose, on that personal level, so that we can provide something, that they want. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do.
And they're coming into you, but you're offering a service that they know is going to be so personalized they've come to you.
Exactly.
I think one of the good examples for where personalization doesn't work is if you ever go on hold with a utility service on a chat bot, and it kind of pops up with a little thing and pretends that they're there, and then someone eventually comes there. You're just like, why bother? Just answer it when you're ready. One of the things that when we talk to customers, any user it doesn't matter who it is in the company, whether it's an email, whether it's a face-to-face experience, whether it's an experiential thing, they take whatever the brand gives them, they say that they call that a person. So if you're rude to them on the phone, that was the brand being rude to them. It's not an individual. For a viewer, for a listener, it's anything that you communicate is a relationship with that brand. And at any touch point, if it doesn't go right, that's where things go wrong for you. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Do you know what? I think as a brand, if you have managed to map out all of those touch points, that is an amazing kind of feat in itself, because brands often kind of fall at that first hurdle because they don't actually manage to do it. But yes, I agree. Yeah.
I think it's just really interesting of the different examples that you brought up, and just the emotional language all of you have used on how satisfied or how it felt that the brands were listening to you. So, for example, with the Duolingo, it's quite clear that the personalization is tied into one, the business need of they want you to keep coming back, a higher frequency, but also feeding into you as a language learner of you want to keep fresh, keep educated, and not disappoint the sort of passive aggressive owl.
Yeah, and the owl's sometimes happy. If you're doing well, the owl get happy. Yeah,
but
I'm not so good at it. So the owl
but then going to the Marmite example of you can put your name on a Marmite jar. It's nice to customize it, but there's not an added sort of emotional level, or it's answering a business sort of need. That's sort of a conversation we've been having at Distillery of what is personalization, what is customization, and we're coming up with ideas that customization is like the Marmite example, you could put name on a jar, but personalization is going to your Body Shop example of using data, using what the company knows about you to do a very personalized service, so that that it feels the company is listening to you and providing a personalized experience that makes you feel valued as a
and
customer.
We all know the prime example of that is Amazon Recommends. I think you use even the stat on here. So Amazon Recommends gets 35% of their business from the bits that they sell you at the bottom when you're going to search for it. So you always it's usually about 4 little boxes of, do you want this extra product? It's big uplift for them, and it increases their sales. Love them or loathe them, it works.
I wonder if you're making me think maybe one of the most powerful words, if we strip it into human things, is some of the best examples of personalization are when you are remembered. What you've done, what you've said, all that kind of stuff is remembered and it's carried forward. And I think we get frustrated with experiences or with brands when it's not remembered.
Yeah.
And so if personalization can do that, then I think that's where you get what I think we're talking about is you get that real emotional engagement, because that's a very human thing, to remember somebody and remember things about them. That's really quite human. And, maybe it's weirdly ironic that one of the great diseases of our time is the fact that we're living longer and we're not able to remember anymore. So if machines can do it for us, that's quite powerful.
And Facebook are very good at that. Things into your timeline. Did anyone get I suppose you're all Spotify users. You all got Spotify Wrapped at the end of the last year. You know, that was a beautiful bit of automation. All it was metadata coming straight through of who your top artist was. Mine came out. You don't even want to know. I don't think anyone else had B. Arthur's Carnegie Hall album in their top things of the year. But, you know, it's something that really connects you to the brand. And what I think you were very good at there is it's shareable. So if you feel good about it, you will share it with a friend. Your friend could become a new customer. And one of the biggest costs when we do marketing is attracting new customers. So if you're doing the job for me, it's free. And that's where customization back can become fun, because if you recommend a friend, do I as a brand give you something in return for it, which makes you even more of an advocate.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up the shareability. Is that something that, Iona, you've seen with your customers of, you know, they've received a very specific service based on their sort of their genetics, but do you see customers sort of sharing that with their friends and family?
I think in like the data world, obviously there's sharing online and things, but with my products, because you get something physical, it's slightly different thing where you want to you can literally physically show off your identity in the same way that the original idea came from the idea of the Scottish tartan representing different clans and families, and that being your inherited identity. So it's the same principle, but just fast forwarded. So I definitely think there's something shareable, and it's tactile, and it's in your hands versus it's secret in your body kind of thing. But I think sharing data, kind of going back to the Spotify Wrapped campaign, I was thinking the same thing in different people's hands can be quite dangerous, because when Spotify did their first advertising campaign saying to the 20 people who listened to this song on Valentine's Day, you okay, hon? And everyone thought it was amazing. And then Revolut, the digital bank, used the same model of campaign, putting people's bank data on, saying whoever bought the takeaway for one on Valentine's Day, you okay, hun? And obviously everyone lost their shit, because that's not okay. And it was completely the same campaign, but just two different industries using the same tool completely had polar reactions. And then when Revolut said, oh, don't worry, we actually made up that data, that also got everyone really angry, because they're using fake data. It was just awful. So I just think it's people like to share, but when brands are sharing data on your behalf, it gets really contentious.
And you do get into a duty of care thing. So if you're a brand, and there are lots of little games and apps that allow you, that you give the right to use your photograph on Facebook is a good example. So you play a certain game on it, they're allowed to use your image. If you've got a product or a service pulling a photograph off Facebook. Now, I'm not giving a real example, but how would you feel if it's pulling you drunk off a holiday and trying to sell your pension off the back of it, saying, isn't it time you grew up or something? Yeah. Or, which is quite a good advertising campaign, I might steal it. But more specifically is duty of care if people have got their children in photographs. So people get very, very upset, even if it's just in the background, is a brand can have a relationship with me, you have no right to my child or no right to my family.
Yeah, so duty of care. Georgie, is that something that is front and center in conversations that you have within Vitl of how do we make sure we take care of our customers?
Yeah, I think for us, data security and data privacy has always been at the forefront. And I think that's why when GDPR did come into effect, we didn't have to make a huge amount of changes to our system and our business, because we kind of always had that at the forefront. I think for us as well, it's important that our customers, have control over their data. So whether that's, downloading their genome sequence in relation to their DNA, that's a really important aspect for us. And I think another point is that I suppose the customer knows that the information they're giving is being used for, a specific objective related to them. So their personalized health and their nutritional health.
And how exactly do you communicate that? Because I think a lot of us have experiences of, you get a very long permissions where you just scroll down and you just click OK, and you don't really realize what you are agreeing to give up when it comes to privacy or use of your data. So how do you, I guess, really make sure that you still get permission, but are being
meaningfully.
Yes, meaningfully, transparent. Still getting that trust from customers.
Yeah, I think for us, it's we've kind of created a brand and a platform that we feel or we hope that is quite kind of user friendly and kind of gives a kind of trusting, safe kind of environment. our consultation is also built in a way that is, I suppose, conversation-like, as would occur if you went to see a nutritionist. You know, it's a one-to-one. You know, it's a very personal experience, and it's about presenting the information, you know, appropriately and correctly, and making sure that it is all there, but also in a way that's, you know, a kind of safe environment for the customer.
But yours, again, is someone that, you know, the customer's going to you. They might have seen an advert or something, but they've gone to you and started a relationship. It's where the relationship becomes more blurred lines and dubious, that you might be subscribing to, you know, something as simple as you renew your insurance and it says, can we send you offers by our selected partners? And you go, yeah, but how much data is being shared here? And then suddenly you get emails from left, right, and center. And if I subscribe to this one, I'm still going to get other bits and bobs. It's that relationship that I think people feel very uncomfortable about and are more prone to think people are going to use it negatively. It probably has never been thought of being used negatively. It probably was always meant to be used to safeguard themselves. But people don't allow the good people to do what they want to do because they're fearful of the bad people. And the bad people are really bad.
Most of that, the GDPR has now stopped.
Yeah.
But if you want to open a can of worms, we could say the words ad tech, because that is the next front line where the ICO, the regulator of data, she is turning her attention there because, and I'm way out of my depth here, so those of you who work in the ad tech space, if you look at those diagrams that show where the data starts and how it gets shared, it's shared hundreds of times to influence the placement of programmatic advertising and real-time bidding and stuff like that. That is still the Wild West without a doubt. And there will be, you heard it here, I can confidently predict there will be a comeuppance or 20 or so with some ICO regulator hefty fines, 3 o'clock raids, and all that kind of stuff will be happening if the ad tech industry does not self-regulate very quickly. But a couple of case histories if you are interested in working out how to, in a way that is true to your brand, gather data. There's a great case history from Channel 4. As a public organisation, they're kind of open about it. And when they went on their data gathering process, they did it in a very brand concordant way. They used Graham Norton, in fact, to kind of front a whole campaign. And in a film, he tells you what they do with the data, what they will store, what they won't store, and all that kind of stuff. Go on the DMA website. I think you'll find the case history there. Another great one from The Guardian. Interesting that they're both quite public organisations, but good to hear that they're using data responsibly.
Well, I guess it goes back to that, almost the flight safety videos. Like, it's very dry information, but you see almost these airlines trying to top each other of, we want to communicate this information to you, but whether it's, you know, Air New Zealand using actors who are portraying hobbits, or British Airways who are getting this famous British celebrities to communicate that info, so at least people aren't just being dazed when receiving that information. So perhaps it's...
And that is the basic of personalisation, isn't it? It's making the experience richer for all of us. You know, whatever that is you want it to be a bit more funny, you want it to be a bit more simple, it's personalising for yourself.
Yeah. So Tim, you mentioned in your intro that a lot of brands are coming to you with absolutely no sort of knowledge. Where do you think within their businesses that drive is coming from to learn about personalization? Is it coming from the CEO? Is it coming from money? So where have you?
Because I think so. I obviously work with a lot of TV brands, and 10 years ago you would have a star that was signed to a network or a show that lived on a network. Now it's quite fluid, and there's new players, people like Netflix coming in offering a hell of a lot of money. So people don't have an affinity with the brands they used to have. Now some do. There's a really great brand I'm working with at the moment, a Hispanic brand called Univision, who are the fourth biggest network in America. Spanish-speaking network, and they've put purpose at the real heart of their brand values. So they're all about young Hispanic people on the rise. So everything that they do in sort of their marketing, their CSR, is all about supporting Hispanic people to grow their role in a modern America. And that is where their sort of personalization goes. They still promote programs, but in terms of a network, they've gone, we're not going to bother the stars. You'll get them in our brand trails, you'll get them in our ATV shows for the things. What we're going to do as a network is say that we're all about young Hispanic people, and we're going to reflect their lives on the channel. We're going to put our CSR money into things that will benefit their lives, and we will be the person that in 10 years' time, when we're watching on whatever platform, people will still say they are part of my life because they paid for the lunches at my kid's school party, or whatever it is. It's people thinking differently. And it's not new behavior. It's going back to how old brands used to behave. It's, when we used to get our groceries from the greengrocer or something like that, you used to have a relationship with them and you would go back time and time again. That's what brands are asking now. They're asking, what do I need to do to stop new people eating my lunch? Mm. And lots of them are scared, because it is quite effective to give Kim Kardashian £1 million. She sends a tweet out, 10 minutes work, and there is product uplift. But you're going to run out of money very quickly if you promote everything with one of those.
So I guess taking a different angle from the client side, so Iona and Georgie, where does personalization sit? Does it sit within a certain department, or is it everyone has that in their mind of customer centric and with whatever they do? So Iona?
Within the business.
Within your business. Where?
It is front and center of everything. I think the customer is like a huge part of the whole journey from the very beginning, which I think is kind of the experience part of it. So they get sent out a DNA kit, so they literally have to do the testing themselves. So they become an intrinsic part of the production process, which I think is quite unusual. It's different from just going into a store. So already they feel like they're part of, they're with you with the brand a bit more. And then we do the DNA testing and give them the kind of unique pattern, but that's the kind of personalization aspect. But then we talk to them about basically they can customize that themselves, which I think is the difference. So we provide the DNA pattern, and then they get the option of customizing it with the colors they want. Because we found from the first iterations of products that when we just did it completely from their genetics without any input from themselves from a design aspect, people don't want that. They don't want to wear something which is a different color or the wrong color or that kind of thing. So I think the key to the business is to have personalization and customization, and to allow people a bit of choice and a bit of putting their own identity in it in terms of aesthetics, which I think is the marriage which works quite well. Mm-hmm.
And I think probably kind of echoing a lot of what Iona has said, it would be quite similar in regards to what we're doing. So the customer, is involved from step one. They're the individuals who are completing the consultation. And I suppose that really was the kind of concept of what Vitl was trying to do from the get-go. There's this insane amount of information out there in terms of health and nutrition, and how do we, and it can be expensive and time consuming to go and see a nutritionist one-on-one, and how can we really create something that is, an in the pocket, app based or online nutritionist for people, and having the user really involved from the step one, and kind of working with them through that process, and then kind of adding on different data points to really keep the product specific and unique to them.
It's do you remember when you were a kid and you used to have an ice cream? Someone gave you an ice cream. It was nice to have an ice cream, but if you had an ice cream and you were allowed to put all the different toppings on, you were far more engaged in the process of it. It's that sort of thing. It's getting back to basics, that our emotions connect to brands, to products, to services, to make us feel good about it. Why is it more helpful to our life? Everything seems to have been making our lives more difficult. So how can we get back to making our lives easier? Having everything delivered in one go, having a nice person deliver it with your tickets for the Olympics. It's all brand experience.
So on that tasty note, I just want to make sure we have enough time to have questions from the audience. So while we are getting set up with the microphone, just a final question for our panel. So just imagine someone, one of our audience members is curious of learning more about personalization. What's the first thing they should do to learn more?
I think it's about speaking to the customers specific to, your particular product. I think it's about really understanding them on a personal level and kind of going from there.
Yeah, whatever your product is, what do you want to personalize and why do you want to do it? Who, what, why? It's always that three simple things. And it needs to be a reward. You've got to reward the person doing it. So yeah, just think, why do you want to personalize something? If you don't need to personalize it, don't personalize it. If it's going to have some benefit to your customers, then explore all the opportunities, because there's so many exciting things. Your products sound just amazing.
Yeah, I think it's about, thank you. I think it's about finding what innovations, like what tools you can use. So like personalization has been always a thing from for years and years and years. But I think now it's like, what new technologies are there out there? So is it genetic stuff, or is it, there's manufacturing processes now where you can do mass customization, whereas before to do customized products, it kind of had to be just like handmade or one-off things. So it's now cheaper and more accessible to do sort of customization and personalization en masse. So I think it's, look out for the different technologies and resources and the new stuff coming up.
So in my world, from a communications point of view, I think lots of things have been said. So map your journey. If you only do it if you really need to do it, don't make it creepy. I wonder if the end goal from a communications point of view is that the consumer doesn't realize that the communication has been personalized.
Yeah.
That it's so human and right and thought through that's the end goal for us. If it's a bit clunky, you failed. But if it's seamless and right, then job done, I think.
You like the Duolingo wise owl.
Yes.
All right, so let's open up to the audience. We'll just do like question time. Please raise your hand. All right, back.
Hi guys, thank you. It was really interesting. So I've been in digital media for over, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but over 10 years. So it's all about personalization and sort of getting your message across. In 2 years' time, the cookie's going to crumble, Chrome are going to diminish it, and almost brands are going to have to sort of start from the beginning in terms of knowing their audience and understanding it. I have two questions. What strategy and what plans do you have in place to actually ensure that you still have that connection with your customers? And when you do start building, the second question is, when you start building up your database, let's say, what will you do with it? How will you actually communicate with your customers versus sort of today's communication? Because that sort of connection is going to be different in a way. Like I said, you're going to start from scratch in a way. So it'd be really interesting to know about sort of your strategy, your thoughts in relation to that.
Is that more pertinent to you than me?
Well, I suppose kind of on your first question, I suppose it's that kind of always being engaged with the customer. It's like always ensuring that, no matter how big the organization and the company gets, to always ensure that you have that foot, at that seat at the table with your customer, and always ensuring that you are, things can get crazy busy with new projects and products, etc. But always making sure that you allow that time for whether it's focus groups or phone conversations to kind of keep that engagement, I think is really important.
I think it'll allow creativity. It'll allow more creativity. So, roll with it. See what's fun. See what's exciting. You've got all those social media channels. You've got your conversation's going to be happening anyway. So it's about playing with your brand. And we're talking about, massive big brands who are going to churn a lot of people. And that doesn't matter because you're fishing within a very big pool for who your customers are. People like you are much more specific. They're already fans. So it's making those fans into advocates, and they're the ones who are going to spread the word. I actually think that's going to be a great thing. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be more challenging. And you're probably not getting many sales off that big fish pond anyway. It's probably a small market within there that's actually repeat customers.
I think it's a strategy that it always has been, which is that the word that Steve would use is fans, and fans want to come to you. You don't have to kind of reach out to them. So just make sure that they're your fans now.
Next question.
Hello. My question is, does personalisation come at a cost to the environment with its product and its packaging and everything that comes with it?
Very timely question.
I think it's actually the opposite in a way, because I think it's literally kind of the opposite of mass production. So well, from my business model, we literally make everything to order. Like, you cannot mass produce it. So I think in that terms, it's an item. This is mainly just for physical things, but it's literally made to order. It's unique to you, so you're way less likely to throw it away. I think it's like less things which are more meaningful. So I think in terms of cost to the environment, it's definitely less wasteful, especially in like the world of like fast fashion and kind of fast everything. So I think making things more meaningful for people gives things longevity, even if it is digital or physical.
I think you're right. There's always going to be random crap made with your name on it that's going to go in landfill, but that's not engaging a mass audience, is it? I think you're right. I think people are asking for, particularly in the beauty sector, people are asking for less packaging in things. We're seeing that coming through now, and I think it's your consumer choice. It's up to you to say to the brand, this is how I want the product, this is how I want it delivered, this is what I want my engagement. And there might be some negotiation on price in the future. There's lots of the luxury goods brands that deliver in really bloody expensive products. If they're taking the packaging away from it, because you don't want it, you just want what's inside it, then, well, you're entitled to a discount. I'm never telling a client that, because they'll be like, don't talk me out of money. But it's a consumer's game, isn't it?
I wonder, I'm trying to think in the communications world that I work in. I think, albeit in a much smaller way, but the packaging argument that you made very well, I think it rings true for communications. It will always be slightly more expensive to personalize a communication. And I think it makes marketers more mindful of what communications they're sending out and how many they're sending out. So I think it will be more sustainable in the long run as a result. So I think personalization does help that.
Yeah, agree.
All right, next question.
Hi there. As a fellow ad man of the evil type, I got so many questions, I've got to decide which one to ask you now. One of the observations I had is that when you guys are providing personalized services where consumers are giving you their data and you're giving them something great in return, that seems like a really great exchange. But most of the time in communications, we're not doing that. We're using data to make predictions about what people might like in the future. And I've had this thought before that we're on much safer ground when we're giving people data about themselves that is true and useful and helpful versus data that is trying to predict or, what people might like in the future. Most of the time it's wrong, but, hey, a small percentage conversion still works better, and so we keep doing it. I just wonder if you've got any kind of observations on that, and whether the guys that are doing great first-party data kind of products are also using that data to find audiences and go predicting, and sort of in the communication side as well, if you guys are doing that.
No. Yeah, I think I was really, partly from a legal perspective, well, from a moral, like an ethical and a legal perspective, just no, it was way more hassle than it's worth, and I fundamentally didn't agree with it, even though it's probably a financially better decision. It was actually quite scary when I set up the company before GDPR. And even now, there was literally nothing that I had to register or do to hold genetic data that was different from me holding an email address. So that was, to me, was really shocking. Mm-hmm. And I just really felt that it was an example of how innovation completely outpaces legislation. And that's quite scary. And in the UK, we're really slow. Like the US are much faster on that. And I've worked with quite a lot of American companies, and it's really helped me keep up to speed with stuff. But yeah, I think there's a fine line about doing good and evil.
Yeah, and I think probably just to add to that, I think there's always going to be that balance, right, around like the data that we have and then the prediction of what's to come. And it's quite hard to get that balance right. But I think it's about, putting your heads together to really map that out and to kind of, a person at that table should be the consumer as well to kind of understand that viewpoint. So yeah, I think there's a fine balance, but it's a really good question and something that I think companies should be asking themselves actually as they go, and not just a once off and they keep going.
Yeah, it seems to me it still is an environment of productization before marketing. So it does seem that this is the product need, and how would we market it, rather than using, particularly in the entertainment sector, using people's entertainment, using people's data to.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly true in kind of the health industry because, you know, we kind of know that there's these pillars of health that people need support with. So it's, in some regards, maybe a little bit easier to kind of bracket things and categorize things. But then equally, you can't put too fine a bracket on it because you're, you know, trying to use all the different data points.
I think you make a really good point, and maybe another thing we should take away from this is if you are going to try and be sophisticated with your personalization and you're using predictions as part of your personalization, have some kind of really smart confidence factor in it. How confident are you in the prediction? Because I think, you've made me realize, I think that when you predict and you get it wrong, it's actually much, much worse. You know, when I get ads that are clearly aimed at somebody who's 30 years younger than me, on YouTube mostly, I have to say, as pre-rolls, so God knows what Google are doing with the data they know about me. I just think that is so stupid, and they massively misfire. And the brands that have paid Google for the pre-roll actually are not getting value for money because they're paying for the thing because I've done me 10 seconds or whatever it is, so they're paying for it. But I think they're stupid for really misfiring. So I think build a confidence factor into your predictability. And I would say then if you're not confident, then I would rather tell you and get the right communication than not be asked. Does that make sense? I'm quite happy to give data if it means I get a better, my word again, experience, I think.
So I think we have time for one more question. Do we have, yep.
First of all, thank you very much for all of your points. It was a really great talk. I guess for Georgie and Iona, in terms of an e-commerce perspective and speaking as a digital marketer, we tend to spend so much time trying to get people into a e-commerce transactional funnel. I think the key takeaway from me, I love that idea of inserting kind of collaborative friction right at the point of transaction. You know, here's what we think you might like, but what do you think? You know, to the point of the DNA products. But it might be a bit counterintuitive in terms of putting that final friction point just at the point of sale. Could you maybe just elaborate on any kind of anecdotal feedback? Do people like it? Is it successful?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be the case. But on our website, we have a bit where you can play with like an interactive tool where you can just play and put colors together, so you can have a bit of a play without having to like commit to anything. But actually, we do that process after you've bought it. So you get told that's going to happen, but you don't have to actually follow through with it. So you buy the test and then you've like bought it basically. Because I think, yeah, like limiting the steps to purchase is, so we send them like a grayscale. Well, they kind of select kind of colors they think they might want, and we send them that pattern, and they get to like play with the tool and change it. So yeah, definitely do it after purchase is my is my tip.
Yeah, I think it's a similar model for us at Vitl, in that the individual has already gone through the consultation. They have a recommendation for supplements and for diet and lifestyle advice, if that's the funnel that they've come down. And then at that stage, if they are interested in further personalization, that's when we kind of would propose things like DNA testing and blood testing to really further personalize their products. But I suppose because there is so many data points in the kind of consultation that the individual is doing, I think it's quite important that we kind of get to a result where we're recommending something for them, especially when it's related to their health, and then they can further personalize that, you know, after that recommendation is done. But that does happen at that stage, and then they can, you know, decide around purchase, etc.
It's like the sweets at the till at the supermarket. There's always something nice. If you put something there, people will buy it. So play around with it. I think it's a great opportunity. And when they receive the thing, there's direct mailing inside there. So there could be a little treat or a little something sample. Everyone loves something that's free. You're really trying to get something on social, so it's something surprising, different, unusual, creative that makes your brand stand out. Again, ethical, and it's not going to go into landfill, but it is your opportunity. Once you've got someone at the point of sale or after the point of sale, it is your quickest opportunity to sell again.
And I think a point related to that is around testing. So like you were saying, just kind of test. If there is a concept or an idea that you have, you know, give it a try for a couple of weeks, track that data, and then see, you know, what the preferred path is.
I actually had an example of a woman who bought something literally 2 years ago, and she took her until last week to decide what colours she wanted. It was so painful. Like, I'd literally given up hope on her, and she would just like every couple of months be like, "Oh, I've changed my mind. Can I try this combination?" And then I'd send her back a visualization. And it is quite it's semi-automated, but you still have to have like the email correspondence. And it literally took her 2 years to decide the colours. And I just think like people want a bit of choice, but even maybe that's like
Object to terms and conditions.
Yeah, I was like, you really should have put like a time clause in there, which I didn't do. Yeah.
Wow, great.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank the panelists for coming and sharing their thoughts and experiences this evening. I hope everyone in the audience found it helpful and learned something. So we'd love for you to keep in touch. If you go to our website, wearedistillery.co, or follow us on our socials at We Are Distillery. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thanks for tuning in. What a fantastic discussion on personalisation. We're always looking to grow and learn more, so we'd love to hear your thoughts, insights and ideas. Send them our way on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook at We Are Distillery. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. See you next time.